Internet, it's me again, Will. So today I want to talk to you about Jared Leisek and the allegations that have been levied against him out of the state of Utah. Now, before this begins, for each and every one of you out there in the comment section, you keyboard warriors out there that want to, put in the comment section, hell, the court of public opinion is very harsh and you have no factual evidence to support anything that you've said in any of your videos. Or those who say that Jared Leisek is innocent until proven guilty, or that these are alleged crimes. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know that. You know that. But when it comes to the court of public opinion, I ask you this. What are you watching and listening to that is not in the court of public opinion? I'm basing everything that I'm about to say in this video on the court records, the statements from Jared to the actual victim itself, the statements from the victim to Jared, the actual statements from additional family members who have spoken out, the statements from his sister, about the actual allegations itself. On top of that, the state law for the state of Utah, the laws of the United States of America regarding these actual crimes. That's 7 different avenues of actual information that I am supporting my opinion on, and here it is. We're going to go back 30 years ago in this situation when the allegations of what he did may have occurred. In the actual statements itself, the first off you need to understand is that Jared Leisek, according to his sister, the victim, and an additional family member, 3 separate sources who spoke and didn't know that the other sources were actually going to make an actual statement on this, all said that Jared, regarding this victim was not the first victim of Jared's, nor was this victim the last victim. Now, thinking back 30 years ago, depending upon the actual month of the alleged crimes, the victim was 9 years and either 9 years and 4 months or 9 years and 6 months of age, not even 10 years old. Jared Leisek at the time was 17 years old, 17 years 8 months, or 17 years and 10 months of age at the time of the alleged crimes. Obviously, at that point of it being of 17 years of age, almost 18, he knew right from wrong. This wasn't something that he did when he was 10 years old, or as he tried to play it to the victim in the communication, he tried to make it out like he was 12 years of age. He wasn't 12 years of age when he abused the victim in these allegations. All right, we've got that straight. Now, if we can send men and women of the age of 18 to war to defend their country, Jared so much can and will be and should be held accountable for the crimes that he committed. He was of age to make that decision. True, yes, ladies and gentlemen, his brain wasn't completely developed. As we know, biologically, the male brain is not fully developed until around the age of 23. But still, Jared knew right from wrong. Now, let's speak about the possible allegations that Jared himself was a victim of either physical or sexual abuse, or both, by a family member and an additional member from outside of the home. Is there any factual evidence that supports that actual claim by Jared? And I might add that it's the only time that it has ever come up is in the actual communication with the victim. Is there any supporting information that actually happened? Well, if you go through the statements that are actually that have been made by his sister and additional family members who spoke out on this, there is a tiny little bit of truth to that. That doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means that it's a possibility that Jared may have actually been a victim of physical and sexual abuse himself? Does that in some way mitigate his actual, crime that he committed against this one family member? Now, we know there's a victim before, and we know there's most likely a victim afterwards, which we'll touch on in just a minute. But does that mitigate it? Just because somebody abuses you doesn't give you the right to abuse somebody else. And likewise for Jared, just because somebody may have abused him when he was younger, at approximately around the age of 10 to 11 years of age, it doesn't give him the right to then fast forward 6 years or 7 years from the time that it may have happened to abuse or continue this cycle of abuse amongst other people that he perpetrated amongst others when he knew right from wrong. That's the facts, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Now, because there's 30 years has gone by, should he be held accountable? In the eyes of the law in the state of Utah and the laws of the United States of America, which Jared Leisek must live under, it does not mitigate and say that there should not be any consequences for his actual crimes. What will most likely happen in this situation is this. On November 30th, we know from his actual statements through his attorney, on November 30th, Jared will be due in court in San Pete, Utah. He will enter a not guilty plea on the actual charges. What most likely will happen at some point, therefore, shortly afterwards, is the prosecuting attorney will offer some type of plea agreement to Jared on these charges. Plead guilty to this, and here is your actual sentence, and here is your suspended sentence on the total thing, and you must enter as a sex offender for in this amount of time or indefinite period of time. Therefore, going forward. Why would they offer something like this? A plea agreement to, charges like this. One, right off the bat, we don't have to bring the victim into court to relive the situation. We don't have to, dig up, additional witnesses, and you're going to ask, well, how likely would it be that he would be found guilty? And I will get to that as well. Now, it would save time and money for the court. Plus, it wouldn't have to harm the victim in any way. Going forward, where they would have to relive it. We want to, protect the victim of this actual crime. Now, onto the actual charges itself. Jared has not only admitted that the communications between him and the victim, where he actually outright admits in those actual messages, communication with the victim, that yes, he's sorry for what he did. Yes, he actually did these actual things to this 10-year-old, niece, not even 10-year-old, but he admits to it. That is extremely damning when it comes to the actual charges itself, and is he guilty or not guilty? He can enter a not guilty plea and he is very guilty of the actual charges itself. But additionally, so we'd save money, we'd save the victim the turmoil of having to do it, and we would, speed the process of justice along and helping gain, some kind of closure for the family in this situation. But additionally, it does not mitigate the fact that if they can prove that there are additional victims after this victim or before, those would be separate charges. Now we must look at coming forward from what I said, we must look at the fact that if there was an additional victim after this, Jared would be an adult. It would have been after his 18th birthday, somewhere between the ages of 18 and 27 when he finally left the state of Utah. He would have been an adult during this time, and any crime that he may have committed during those times would be obviously, looked at in a different, spotlight, of, actual guilt. If they can prove those, they would go after him for that crime after the age of 18. The other ones before this victim, he would be a juvenile and would get some kind of leniency, I guess, again, on the actual charges. But as an adult, are there victims after he left the state of Utah at the age of 27? We don't know. Let's hope that there isn't. Now, let's also keep this in context that while Jared, after he left Utah, he went back east, and he was there for several years. And if you look at his actual resume, there's some holes in his resume. So what do I personally think should happen with Jared Leisek? Looking at the time and using the mitigation, of that he was possibly abused himself in this, situation, and knowing that he was just before the age of 18 and knew better to not commit these crimes, again, or abuse, someone else, and just using that information, not knowing that there possibly is a victim beforehand or a victim after this. All right, you use just the facts that he has admitted to, and you use those allegations and the actual statements and the admissions, because again, you have to also remember that he's admitted to at least 3 other people that the communications and these events happened after the charges were filed. He's admitted that the actual allegations and charges are real. What do I think the sentence should be? Looking at the state of Utah, the laws that would be applicable in this situation, I believe Jared should be sentenced to no less than 4 years in the state penitentiary for his crimes. I additionally think that he should be fined a fine of around $25,000, including court costs, in that total of $25,000. And then a mandatory minimum of 10 years registering as a sex offender in the state of Utah, which would then require him to register as a sex offender in any state going forward where he would want to do any kind of work with Adventures with Purpose or alike, where he would be allowed in and out of anyone's home where they may have minor children. This would be the minimum of 10 years. Based on the state laws in the state of Utah. That's what I think should be the sentence. What will most likely happen in this is he will get somewhere right around a year, with a large portion of that 1 year suspended, in case he keep your record clean, no more no more convictions. Here's a fine, and then free. So I do believe he will get something around that lines, because remember, ladies and gentlemen, additionally, Jared needs to get out and earn money. His wife does not make enough money to afford a $1.6 million home. That home that he has must be paid for on the sweat and back, of all those who had, volunteered with Adventures with Purpose, all those other volunteer groups where Jared did work with. He pays for that house off of them, and through the donations that have come directly from you in your super chats, super thanks, and you clicking on every video with Adventures with Purpose and watching it from here on forward is helping him pay for that $1.6 million home. All right? So otherwise, Jared and his wife are going to have to sell their dream home and move to someplace else. Should we punish Jared's wife and his children for his transgressions against his family members? Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen. Do you think that the wife didn't know about these? Yeah, she knew about what Jared had done in the past, and she's known about what has happened to him, because he admitted in the actual emails itself that he's spoken to her about it. All right? So that's what I think is going to happen from here on out. Now, Adventures with Purpose. A lot of people have asked me in the emails and communications, since this all broke, what is going to happen with Adventures with Purpose. One of two things is going to happen. with Adventures with Purpose, AWP, going forward. One, Jared is going to rebrand it as someone else's group, and will still be, the one person in control of it from behind the curtain. Think of it like Wizard of Oz, pulling the levers and controlling what happens. All right, that's option one. Option two is that he sells it all off, and then he moves on to a different, adventure altogether of his own. But likewise, I need to make sure everyone understands. No one with AWP, not Doug Bishop, not Josh Cantu, not, Ren, no one who worked with Adventures with Purpose knew of these allegations, knew of these charges, all right, until it became public. No one knew what Jared had done in the past, and we should not come down on them for that. And likewise, at the same time, speaking of the group itself, none of them can take over Adventures with Purpose and move forward, even if it's not with that equipment. All right, Jared Leisek owns the name, the copyrights, the videos, the actual equipment, the RV. He owns 100% of it, and he has decided, along with his wife, how any revenue from AWP is shared with the community at large. If he decides not to share it, he doesn't. And we know of several stories of different volunteer groups who were misled in that he would at least cover some expenses for them to come to where they were to volunteer to help him, do these recoveries. Where in the end, he's decided, no, I'm keeping 100% of the revenue. And this is why these different groups and different individuals have parted ways with AWP over the years. So we know that they can't take over AWP, and we don't know where they're going to go from here. Additionally, there are legal contracts that are in place that require some of the members, former members of AWP, to not make public statements there and not go forward in a competitive nature against AWP. Yes, there has been a lot of rumors and hints, if you read between the lines of some of the statements, especially Doug Bishop's, that there may be a non-competitive clause in their contract, and that they must get that dealt with in a legal situation through attorneys. So if they can move forward and maybe do something, maybe with Adventures with Nug or another group like that, where they can continue to do the good work. Because let's not forget, even though Jared is a giant piece of excrement, it doesn't mean that the rest of the group is. And it doesn't mean that the purpose of what they were doing doesn't have merit. Over 20 families have gotten closure since their loved ones have been brought back, and they've been able to formally bury them, or have their loved ones cremated and have some kind of closure to the situation, what took place with their loved ones disappearing, either at their own hands or by accident. And yes, one of those cases that they did help bring closure to is the Kylie Rodney case. So, they did do great work. But we have to say, look, Adventures with Purpose, even if Jared continues with the group itself, or AWP, he reformulates it and gets new divers and everything else, AWP should die right along with, what has happened. We get a closure with it, within the courts, and a closure with, this charge with this one victim with the court. And we say, okay, this chapter is closed. With that, it being closed, we should close the chapter on AWP. This has been my hot take, and I want to, lastly, before I leave, to everyone who says that these are alleged crimes, they are alleged crimes. But at what point are they alleged and they are actual guilt? He is guilty of the crimes. How many times does he have to admit to it before we say he did it? Now again, he's admitted to 3 people outside, not counting the victim itself. He's admitted to the actual victim multiple times that he did it, and he's admitted to his mother, his grandmother, his wife, that he did these actual crimes. It's just been 30 years since the legal system caught up to him. Again, they're alleged. He is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law, and the court of public opinion is harsh. But I ask of you the one last thing. What are you watching and listening to that is not in the court of public opinion? Because everything about anything that you learn about is in the court of public opinion, if you think about it. Thank you for joining me today. And for each and every one of you out there that may have lived through such an horrific event like this victim did, my heart goes out to each and every one of you. And remember, for each victim that is known out there, there is at least 2 more victims out there that people don't know about. And in this situation, we know of one victim before this victim, and we know of a victim afterwards. There's always 2 victims that we don't know. You stay safe out there. Until next time.